And you guys ready to go? Good evening, everyone. The time is 6:30. We're going to call this meeting of the school committee to order. I'd like to call to order the Hampton-Wilbraham Regional School District School Committee meeting. I see that Dave Sanders from the Wilbraham Public Access Channel is recording. Is there anyone else recording this meeting?
Lots of people.
We'll do roll call in alphabetical order. Bill Bontempi. Cheryl Caruana. Here. Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Patrick Kiernan.
Present.
Lisa Murray. Here. Michelle Boudreau.
Here.
Mara Ryan.
Remote.
Here. If you would please stand. Aaron, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we were going to start with the student reps, but they were busy and are unable to attend tonight, so we'll see them at our next meeting. The next agenda item is Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Human Resources, Mr. Osborne.
So in your packet, you have a student activities audit letter from me. So student activities accounts over $25,000 have to be audited annually. DESE has agreed a while back that the district could conduct an internal audit 2 out of every 3 years. Some of this was paused during COVID, so it started back up again in 21-22, and our auditor will come in and will be coming in and doing a more formal audit of 23 student activities accounts. You'll see there's one small item noted that has been rectified. It just had to do with field trip permissions. There was some turnover, and that person has actually put together sort of a check sheet for the field trip process that I think is absolutely adequate to, if it's on the back of the field trip form, you have a field trip form, so she's made sure it's on the back of every field trip form, so they have a very clear process to follow.
Great. So do we have a similar field trip request that happens at any of the other school buildings or any other grade levels?
Same form.
Okay. Because I think it's a good approach to try to have
So our 2 accounts that are over 25,000 are the middle school and Minnetonka. So the others don't need to be audited, they're small.
I just wasn't sure, from the policy perspective of, where we now have a form. Just curious if we're using the similar type of form across all grades.
We can look at, the form is the same, the checklist in the back. Really, I only discovered she'd updated when I did the audit and asked about it. So we can definitely look at making that more universal.
Okay. Yeah. That was just a thought.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Alrighty, I'm done.
That's it? Oh, sorry. Cruising along. New business, we have Mr. DeCurzio.
Yes, Ronnie Curzio.
From the MRHS Booster Club.
Do you need a minute to get situated, or are you good to go? Just what you want.
All right, well, thank you for having me again.
Just have to speak into the microphone, just so people can hear you.
Austin. Thank you for having me again. What I just handed out is a pamphlet, which is supposed to be a summary of what the Booster Club is, what it does, what it doesn't do, and how it operates. So I know I just gave it to you. You don't have time to read it, so I think I would offer, if you have any questions on it, I can give you my phone number to contact me. I don't have any problems answering questions. But some of the background for the Booster Club. Well before my time, and I'm talking probably the late 80s, early 90s, a group of parents got together to voice their concerns that there was a certain athletic team that was monopolizing all the fundraising opportunities. So they came before the school board and asked the school board to intervene or do something about it. So I think there was a committee that was put together, and they came up with recommendations that the school committee eventually adopted. And that was to have one main booster club that coordinated all the fundraising activities. And underneath that booster club was what we call spirit groups. And each spirit group represents an individual sport. Not a team, but a sport. So like, for example, lacrosse, the varsity, JV, and if it was a freshman team, would all fall under that spirit group. Some of the qualifications to become a spirit group is there's membership. There's a membership fee of $25 a year. And regardless if you play 3 sports during the course of the year, regardless if you have 1 child or 10 children playing sports, it's only $25. That's one of the resources that this main booster club gets funding from. The concessions, primarily for the football, and the booster club has a discount card, if you will, that was had sold for many, many years, and it's a pretty good fundraiser for us. But each spirit group, with the promotion from the athletic director and the coaches, encourages each sport to have what they call a spirit leader. And that spirit leader pretty much is in charge of if there's a need for the sport, to organize a fundraiser. That fundraiser has to be approved by the booster club and then coordinated through the school activities person. Historically, it's been Heidi. Heidi's gone now, and actually on the pamphlets I sent out, I apologize, I still have Heidi's name on there. So part of my responsibility is to coordinate that with the school to make sure there aren't any conflicts of interest with other fundraisers that are going on. So again, so everybody gets a fair chance to fundraise appropriately. There's so much, I'm leaving out a ton. I could open it up to questions as we go along, and feel free to stop me. So we don't fundraise for the sake of fundraising because we are very sensitive. We don't want all the teams going out at the same time, going to the same group of people. We don't, again, I report to this organization, but primarily through the superintendent and the principal and the athletic director. Our concern is we don't want to have any pushback to this group from citizens of both towns who might say, hey, I got solicited 16 times for all the various sports this season. What's going on? Where are my tax dollars going to? So we try to limit the exposure to fundraising to make sure there's a need and a necessity to fundraise. We don't fundraise for the sake of fundraising to build up a kitty. If you look around campus, there's a ton of infrastructure and equipment that's out there. The way I signal the success of the Booster Club is that, at least I've been doing this for 15 years, and well before my kids were here, well after my kids are long gone. I can give you my little sermon about that, maybe after. I measure the success of the Booster Club. In my tenure of 15 years, we've never had to raise the user fees. And never raising the user fees, we have all the infrastructure that we essentially want, that we get feedback from the coaches, and I coordinate with the athletic director. And to me, the user fees are important. I'll give my little background here. I came from a blue-collar family. We didn't have user fees. I'm 100 years old. I'm starting to look my age now, but I was a lacrosse player. If we had user fees, in all likelihood, I probably wouldn't have been able to play the sport. Long story short, I wound up getting a lacrosse scholarship. Probably went to college just to play lacrosse. I was not a very good student. It just wasn't on my list to pay attention in school. I've now matured. Yeah, it's funny. So having gone to college to play lacrosse, I became a successful CEO of a big organization. My point of that is, if it wasn't for lacrosse and my ability to financially play lacrosse, I probably wouldn't be sitting in front of you folks tonight. So it's important to me that we keep those user fees down, spend money appropriately and where it's really needed, and not willy-nilly spend the money that we fundraise for. So That's why I do what I do. I don't know. Patrick and Bill, you know the Booster Club. Am I leaving something out that yes, sure.
I got a
I
question.
shouldn't call on you, sorry.
No, that's fine. It's
No, it's all right, it's all right. It's a question I've always had. When ticket prices when people pay for tickets, do you guys get any of that, all of that, or what happens with that?
It's a little bit above my pay grade, but I believe most of that goes to the MIA.
Okay.
That the ticket prices are, some might go back to the school department, the athletic department.
I would say it depends if you're in tournament play or not. When you're in a tournament, the MIAA takes a big bite. But if it's just a regular season game, then that would go to the athletic department.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would just go through the scope of what boosters covers and what boosters doesn't.
Okay, so yeah, getting back to the whole, so the Booster Club will not cover transportation, will not cover uniforms. Again, we're sensitive to the fact that we don't want to be knocking on somebody's door and saying we're fundraising for transportation. In my mind, that comes from the tax base in the school budget. So you need that 50% in terms of membership. So what we will cover, so for example, if the baseball team needs new bats, and the cost of that is $500, there's separate ledgers for each sport where we collect the money. So we would take $250 from the baseball ledger and $250 from the main Booster Club ledger to pay for that $500 worth of bats. So we typically match 50% on the need of each individual sport. And again, the money that the Big Booster Club gets, it's from concessions, it's from the $25 membership fee, and it's from the discount cards. Now, periodically, and we haven't done it in my tenure, if there's a big need that can be spread across all of the sports, then we'll have a Big Booster Club fundraiser. So we haven't done one of those since I was here, because I think there's enough involvement for each individual sport, and they've done pretty good fundraising activities to fund their 50% of the need through that. So.
Your brochure is really great. I know you must have spent a lot of time on it.
Well, when I joined, it was this whole organization is very confusing to me, so I had to put it together, and hopefully it's simplified enough that it's understandable.
My only concern is that you have parents being told to communicate events to Heidi and she's gone, so I think you should either do new brochures or get a sticker and find out the person they should.
Yeah, no, I mentioned earlier that it was an overlook on my part. I didn't update that.
What can we do to help you?
Nothing. I met with the superintendent this week, and the athletic director is fairly new, but support from the athletic director to encourage the coaches to find a spirit rep and do fundraisings from that point of view if necessary. I think it's worked very well. We've had a little bit of a dip because of during COVID and when the sports schedule was narrowed down, we just kind of suspended all the qualifications about membership and that type of thing. But we're starting to ramp it up again. So it's a little new to certain parents out there. So, but I think it's starting to get back up to speed.
Coming down the road.
Can you use your,
Yeah.
sorry, I realized you gave yours away.
Yeah, I did. So coming down the road, I know that it's you, Mike Flynn, Glenn. You have, what's going to go on in terms of how many, actually, I should start by saying, how many people are on the board?
Yeah, over time, the board is about 8, and they've been with me for the most part since I started. So they get it. What I found over my course of 15 years of doing this is it's best to have people on the board who don't currently have kids at the high school level, because then there's a conflict. They're on the board saying, well, my kid plays soccer. I want to do something for soccer. So we've been able to move along relatively quickly when we have that independence. So
You must have people that are going to be rotating off, and then you guys have, I'm assuming, you would have an interest to try to get more people involved.
Yes, definitely. There's probably I'll call it the JV teams, since we're talking about sports, you know, behind this current group who's ready to step in and replace. And for the most part, they're independent as well, where they would have a conflict. Sometimes there's not, but these are folks who, like I said, when I joined, my kids weren't in the high school level. So they've been on the board or involved, you know, before their kids got to this level. So it makes that transition a lot easier. Thank you.
Is there anything else that we can do for you or any other questions you have for us?
No, once in a while I'll moan to the athletic director or to the principal, and that seems to work. I think one thing, and I know we've tried to do it before. Like I said, I'm close to 100 years old now, and the website for the Booster Club is beyond my capabilities. So I've asked in the past if we can make that as a project for somebody who's taking IT courses and make it part of their curriculum. We haven't been able to do that yet. So that would be helpful if...
You mean like an intern?
Yeah. Well, not so much an intern, they're a student.
Yeah, no, but have a student have an internship
Sure.
for the boosters. And is that something that we can just add a page on in the Rediker website, if I remember back in the day?
My green light was on to ask the question. I know that you have an interest in remaining independent from the district, but would it be objectionable to you if you had some real estate on the district website and have a booster page there?
No, that's fine. We do have one. Mike Roy actually put one together for us, but it hasn't been updated. And just so I am the Booster Club. I apologize for saying I. The Booster Club is not independent from the district. In fact, the Booster Club is reportable to this group right here. So I just want to be clear about that.
So we're currently in the process of refreshing our website, and if you could share with us key features that you'd like to see on your page, we can update that as part of the whole district website update.
Yeah, perfect example of that. Yeah, we give out 4 scholarships every year, and the scholarship application was not updated this year. So I got a few phone calls that it's not current, but we keep the hard copies in the guidance office as well. That's where I directed people this year. So that's one thing off the top of my head, for sure. Like a brochure like that could go on there. Yeah, I can think of things, and I'll touch base with you on that.
Okay, great.
Great.
Ron, I'd like to thank you and all of the members of the boosters for what you guys do. You guys are sort of all the actors behind the curtains that nobody ever sees, but you help the show go on. I really appreciate you coming in.
I appreciate that, but we're happy to be behind the curtains.
Actually, one last quick thing before you go. How is the field going for the compensation for the field? Where are we with that?
We're close. We're close. I'll just leave it at that. I mean, you have a few who make a great effort to finish that. In terms of liabilities, it's all the vendors and folks are paid up.
Okay. Yeah, if you're doing a fundraiser, please let us know so we can attend and pass the word on.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that was too easy.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So the next item up is Special Olympics, but I know that Gina's not here, so John, you would still share?
Yes, I'd be happy to take that one on. So Gina just wanted everyone to know that in our list of things that are coming back online after COVID, Special Olympics is, I think, one of the last ones. So tomorrow we have a team of athletes that we'll be sending off to the Special Olympics in our area. It's going to be held in Munson. We have a turnout event at the high school to send our athletes over the hill next time. So I wish them luck, and I know it's going to be a great day.
Perfect. And it's with some good weather tomorrow.
Nice. Yeah, please let us know how to do.
Will do.
Next item up is recognition of Kelly Baker, building thinking in an I'm classroom.
I'll take that.
Did I say that right?
It was a mouthful. Good evening, everyone. I am excited to share news about one of our elementary educators, Kelly Baker, grade 1 teacher at Mile Tree, has been invited to participate in a webinar hosted by Illustrative Mathematics. That's the publisher of our math program that we've been using K-6 this year. She will be one of 3 panelists discussing how she has been implementing illustrative math along with the practices from the book Building Thinking Classrooms in Mathematics by Peter Liliendahl. The author is also on the panel, so it's like a real fan. Kelly currently teaches grade 1 mathematicians using illustrative mathematics, and this spring she'll complete a graduate degree in teaching mathematics at Mount Holyoke College, where she focused her research on the implementation of the building thinking classroom principles. Kelly serves as a teacher leader within her school, hosting professional development opportunities for her colleagues and advocating for pedagogical changes that enhance student learning. Most recently, Kelly was appointed to the district-wide Math Curriculum Council, a group of educators tasked with implementing high-quality math instruction for students in grades K-12. So there's a little more information in your packet about the actual webinar. It does take place during the school day, so, but anyone that, any teachers that register for it will have access to the recording when it's released so that we can watch it. We'd love to have watch parties, but we have to keep teaching math in the classroom and all the other good stuff. So, but we're really excited for Kelly. It is quite an honor, and she is one of the many teacher leaders that is supporting all this great math work that we're doing in the district. So we're really proud of her. That's awesome.
Congratulations. Did you have anything else you need to share? Moving on to old business, the FY24 budget.
Sure. So, pardon? You want to take it?
It's up to you.
Mark, this is
Okay, great. I think some of you were at a meeting with us for a few minutes yesterday evening, where we had a joint meeting with Hampton Advisory and Wilbraham FinComm. At that point, Wilbraham FinComm, after a little discussion, agreed to increase their assessed amount to $1.3 million. There's a lot of back and forth about, what some of the things we need to do to meet that number might be. There was a talk of adding $200,000 from E&D as a commitment to the school committee. So what John and I have sort of bumped our heads together today and tried to put together a scenario that sustains the budget, sustains the majority of the positions that we were looking at potentially cutting, and that includes the $200,000 in E&D. It includes a small revision to the, a revision to the district budget relative to the entire budget. It's not big, of about $53,000. A net decrease of $66,000. And then recognizing the increase in Chapter 70 that's in the House Ways and Means budget. We do have every reason to believe that that will be carried forward. They do traditionally carry forward those Chapter 70 increases, so we feel like that's a relatively safe one to look at. If you look at some of our cautions below, I think it's important, to remember that we are, dipping further into E&D, and that's money that will not be available in the future. It's a rainy day fund, and it's pouring, right? So, this may be a time. Next year, we can assure you, will be very challenging as well. We're hoping some things swing our way, right? I think we had a lot of those very big special education increases this year. If somehow things swing our way in the next couple of years, we may be able to put a dent in some of what we've taken out. So there are two items that we feel like fall specifically under the school committee's purview that we would ask you to vote. The Chapter 70 we don't believe falls necessarily under the school committee's purview. It's an automatic from the state. But increasing E&D would be in the school committee's purview. That is the school committee's money. Additionally, decreasing the operating budget. The operating budget is within the school committee's purview. So we would ask you to vote those two items.
So I think
I
we
make
should
a
probably
motion to-
vote them separately.
Sure. I make a motion to increase the E&D by $200,000 to a total of $1,050,000.
Second.
Okay, do roll call now? That's how we have our-
Well, Michelle's,
She's still remote?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have to do roll call.
Yeah, no, but I didn't, I wanted to make sure that for something like that, we had to roll call. I was just asking for.
Yeah.
Because she's remote, we have to do it on.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that, yep. Okay,
I'm hacking in right now, if you want to wait a second. We don't know, favorite.
don't run.
Hurry before she gets here.
There she is.
5 minutes to spare when you said you're gonna be here at 7.
I don't think this at all. I think this year was ugly. I think next year's gonna be uglier.
Yeah.
I would not dip into E&D one time. I think and I'm gonna be a broken record again, I am not convinced that we have truly looked at this budget and have gained the operational efficiencies that we need to gain. And instead, to me, this is the easy button. Let's hit E&D and let's hope next year's better. Hope is not a strategy. All indications are next year is worse. I would not touch a dime of E&D.
Just to remind you, we do have a planning committee in place that is looking at a bunch of efficiencies and stuff that hopefully we'll have implemented for the next school year.
Anybody else have any comments, questions?
Yeah,
concerns?
I get my microphone on.
He took the battery with him.
I don't disagree, but with town meeting 3 weeks away, we got our backs against the wall on this. And it does bring up a point as far as efficiencies within the district. I don't like the idea of spending down reserves. I've never been a fan of it. However, given the situation that we had in this fiscal year, and given the time constraints that we had, I do think it's the prudent thing to do. I think that what we need to do as a school district from now until next budget season is to really take a deep dive into those, into the areas where we think we might be able to capture some savings. But I think the overall specter of going into a town meeting and having basically a failed budget, the process by which you reconcile that it's not an easy process. And so I think on both sides, both from finance, advisory, and the school committee, I think it sort of created a new sense of, listen, we need to work together. We need to really drill down. We can't be adversarial. We have to be productive. And so I don't disagree with you, Patrick, but with the amount of time that we have left, I don't think there's enough time to try to capture those inefficiencies. We know where there's areas that we can make improvements. We've talked about it many times, building utilization. We just need to start doing it.
What will be different so that we can start doing it? Where will we get the extra time, and how do you foresee utilizing the finance subcommittee in ways that would help us do that for next year?
So I think where the process stalled this year was on a couple of different levels. But as I pointed out in the meeting last night, there really wasn't a lot of flexibility on, we were trying to capture as much as we could. We whittled the budget down and down. We were able to accomplish quite a bit in terms of savings. But at the end of the day, we were still $800,000 apart, which is a yawning chasm. And I don't know if, given 1 or 2 subcommittee meetings more, if we would have been able to reconcile that. I didn't want to do it this way. Last year we did it. We had the budget finalized before we even got to, we'd already talked about it. We already figured out where all the money was coming from. This year, it wasn't quite as smooth. The ways that I see it happening next year is a little bit more involvement with the entire finance committee rather than just the representatives, because I think some things got lost in translation. I would also say that you know, a little bit more sort of forthright. This is really the first time that we've heard on the finance committee level where I think every single year they've talked about, we want you to be able to show us what would happen is if we didn't give you this money.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty much the discussion that we had up until we provided a list of potential cuts. And then it sort of like it raised a lot of alarm bells. People were like, wait a minute, you know, this is pretty drastic. And you know, people were incredulous, you know, thinking that, well, no, this is, you know, we're cutting positions that are vital, so that it, you know, creates the specter of damaging education. But I would say that, you know, the cuts that were proposed, they weren't unreasonable cuts, and we had said during several of the finance subcommittee meetings that even before we had created the list, like, this is going to influence instruction. Like, we're going to be cutting positions, and I don't know if we really were good at sort of getting that message across. And then, you know, when we looked at the positions and created the list, I believe it was right around the same time that finance had voted what their allotment for the school district was going to be. And so there was a placeholder for $1 million, but we didn't actually know where that number was going. And when they voted that number, it was like, okay, so there's the line drawn in the sand. So now we need to actually look at our budget and decide where these cuts going to come from. And that list was created, I believe, it was produced a day later, 2 days later.
But so I guess my concern with that is it shouldn't have gotten to as far along as we were, but we knew that even the $1 million number was the placeholder. We should have had an idea of what some of those cuts were going to look like then, not waiting till the day after they make their vote and then we get this list telling us of all the things that would be potential cuts. I mean, you can talk about FTEs, you can talk about curriculums or offerings that are going to be cut, but until you kind of have an idea of what that looks like and a dollar amount assigned to it, it's not fair to say to someone, okay, well, we've been talking about it. We had no idea. We went into that, and we were blindsided when we came to this meeting, the roundtable, and I'm sitting on that finance subcommittee with you, and I had no idea what kind of dollar amount I knew an overall, whether it was going to be a shortfall, but I didn't know what that was going to consist of. And I just didn't like coming into this meeting, a roundtable with all of the community members and potentially our representatives from the state and, you know, the federal level, or local level, and not knowing it, and that being the first time I saw that.
I think from an operational level and from a morale level, you know, if you start telegraphing in February what positions might be cut because of budget, I don't think it's a great thing for your teacher group. I think it's a great thing for people to basically be like, okay, in February, am I going to get a pink slip? And so, you know, and we've talked about that many times where, you know, if a teacher thinks they're going to get a pink slip and they're a really good teacher in the district, but they don't have PTS, they're going to look somewhere else. And so all of a sudden in April, we may not cut their position, but they've already made a decision that they're going to move. So it's a balancing act. It really is. I would love to have, you know, I'd love to have a grander picture of what those cuts are going to be earlier. But when we're talking about positional cuts, which was the majority of what we had, it makes it difficult.
I understand what you mean when you say that. I apologize for saying a bunch real quickly.
Yeah.
But in the same right, I think it's also fair for someone to understand how much time if they have to plan that. Because to some degree, if somebody chooses to leave and chooses to go look someplace else, then that's on that individual. That's not necessarily on us as a school committee to say, you know, if they love their job. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen. It can happen to anybody. It can happen to someone that works for you. It can happen to any one of us who work for someone else. But I think it's only fair that if we're responsible for knowing that budget inside and out and being able to explain it, that we have full understanding of what that consists of.
I do have to say that was also it seemed like the feeling in that room last night with the different committees that, well, just say what parts you're going to cut, and if people leave, then they've helped you make that decision to cut those positions. And I want to say that I think that, each teacher is an individual and it's amazing, and to have them come in and share the culture and share, knowing the students and the experience here in the district and in the town, I think that has an immense value. And I've been with companies where rumors came out and people left to find other jobs because they want some security, and it really hurt the organization. So we do have to be careful with that. The other thing that I got from last night's meeting is that we need to show the efficiencies and list them out. When you say, okay, we're going to cut this from here, we're going to lower this, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, put it all on a sheet and be able to hand it to them, because they said, well, you only gave us 3 efficiencies, things that you did for efficiencies, and it's like, well, how do you think we got down from 10% to under 5? I mean, there was a lot of cutting and maneuvering and stuff like that, so I think they want that listed out. I think that showing the effects of the cuts did not seem as important to the majority of the people in that room. It was very important to the representatives that we have on that committee from Wilbraham and Finance, but or at least Wilbraham, and not advisory, but Wilbraham. That I think that's where we should go from now on, is to show them the efficiencies, the things that we have done to lower it, and give them a big list of it and go over that list to prove to them this is what we've done. Because I had heard afterwards that, the reason that I think things were so difficult this year is because they want to make sure that we're doing as much as we can with efficiencies. And I know the TWB is really sticking in their claw. And then openness in the budget from Wilbraham's part, to say, hey, the placeholder's $1 million. Okay, placeholder, that's good. We have a placeholder. Well, it wasn't a placeholder. It was, you're getting $1 million more. That's what we decided, and it was like, if we knew that from the beginning, then we could have done things. We were waiting for, okay, you have a placeholder, which way is it going to go? And we were told, well, we can actually, increase taxes by $1 million without having to go back, and there's all kinds of conversations about what could be done. And, so we're going to work on that, I think, next year to make sure that we have a list of the efficiencies, that we show or review the cuts maybe in more detail, and have openness from Wilbraham on really where they stand, if that number that they give us that's a placeholder is actually the number. So, and I do think we also need to talk about the capital assessment, the capital expenditures that we have here, because I believe last night we were given the directive from the towns, or at least finance and advisory, to take that out of the stabilization money to pay for the second railing and the wireless access points and stuff like that. The air conditioners too, yeah.
So Wilbraham had already, the Wilbraham Finance Committee had already said that they would commit to the air conditioners and the railing that needed to be done. In fact, Maura reminded me that originally we wanted to do that using the ARPA funds, but Hamden didn't have any ARPA funds available.
But they were going to raise the appropriate, whatever the fund word is that they use.
Yeah, and so what we talked about last night was, because it's, and as Aaron brought up, it's summer work, right? I mean, you can't have people drilling holes in concrete with, hammer drills while kids are in class. So these really are things that need to take place during the summer. And so those 2 projects did stand out as being probably the most urgent. And Wilbraham Finance, I have to say that the finance advisory, we all have the best interests of our communities in mind. And, we may not agree on everything, but I respect them. They're Wilbraham Finance, Hamden Advisory, they're a great group of people. And, I'm glad that we came to a resolution that we did. One of the things that we talked about was using the money from the stabilization fund to pay for the railing and to pay for the air conditioners. And so basically the way that the deal was struck was Wilbraham had originally come back at $1 million. We had a gap of like $560,000 they agreed to come up to 600,000. They agreed to up to 1.3. We agreed to put in 1.2 plus pull out the capital needs, which brought us within $60,000. And so, again, it's not a great thing to drain your E&D, but you know, the specter of, like I said, the specter of a failed budget vote carries with it an awful lot of difficulty, and it could potentially even be more adversarial. So I would say that, you know, that part of it works, and you know, Tom brought up some good points.
I think we need a different mindset. I've been listening, and throughout this probably 20-minute conversation, it was all about cuts, and I think Patrick's right. We have a lot of things that we do with our money. Are we doing it the best way possible? Are we finding the best, not the cheapest, but the best way to invest? I was talking with Aaron just before the meeting started about just putting things in CDs, because CDs have gone up to 5% right now, and we've got $6 million sitting around in E&D.
No, 600,000.
I'm sorry, 600,000 in E&D. That's a lot. At 5%, that's not so bad. Are there inefficiencies? And I think it just requires a shift of thinking. Instead of, well, we can cut this. What are we doing now that we can do better, cheaper, and get the most out of money?
So I don't.
I was pointing that to Patrick. Patrick, how would you go about looking at the budget through an efficiency perspective?
I'm not close enough to it to say this is exactly where I would look. I mean, there are certainly areas that I would think that one would focus on. If we look just at the draconian cuts, and there was talk about academic impact, if you look at, there's $102,500 of non-academic reductions in it. So have we truly looked at every single one of those $102,500? When we look at the $266,164, which would be the increase in E&D, and then that reduction that we have right there, that represents less than 0.5% of our entire budget. I would think that we can very easily find less than 0.5% in a $53 million budget. And I recognize time is not on our side, but if we look at it, great example. We have a number. Yesterday, the number that we had from a savings standpoint was $100,000. And if we look at the positions on here, $100,000 would make sense. Now we're closing a grade, yet we only end up with, not closing a grade, closing one class out of school for a grade. And all of a sudden, we only have a savings of $66,164. The numbers to me just don't add up. It seems to me like when we get something, it becomes, okay, we have that, so now we don't need to do this, this, or this. We need to ask the difficult questions of what can we do differently. And I'll go back to it. I don't think the right move is to have a failed budget bill. I agree with you. But I think by moving the $200,000, that's an easy button for us not to sit there and say, you know, we can find $200,000 in a $53 million budget, which I bring that down to move the 266. You're talking less than like 4%, or right around 0.4%. That's not a large number.
If I can just give a little bit more historical perspective on this, to understand that when we look at our rate of expenses, and we look at our revenue increases, they are on two completely different slopes. And so every year, the chasm widens. It has been 20 years since there has been a Prop 2.5 override that allows for some of that correction. And what I heard last night from the committee, especially when it didn't, I've talked to many members of the Finance Committee, and what Mike Mazuka had said is, like, they will fund it all day long and they're behind us as long as we have a plan. As long as we are going to show people not just what we've done, but where we're going. Because it makes sense I mean, and I've had discussions with people about this. Every year we go back to this, we go back to the finance committee, we ask for more money, but we have the same organization structure, we have the same setups in classrooms, we have the same inefficiencies in building utilization. We haven't come up with a plan. Now, hopefully the strategic planning committee will remedy that, and we should be forging a path to constantly improve, not just our facilities and our efficiencies, but to improve our education, to make education better for every kid in the district. And that's what we need to show. So when fire and police and ambulance, when they show up to talk to finance and they give their presentations, they're talking about what they want to do in the future. And we really don't. We talk about what we did last year and how we're going to keep on the same road this year. So I did hear that, and I'm telling you, whether you agree with it or not, I can tell you that most members of the finance committee have the exact same feeling.
And I personally think that Mike was a loud voice in that room yesterday because he was part of the strategic plan committee, like the group of us that drafted the strategic plan, and seeing what everybody wanted from both sides, all the people that were involved in that, and where we saw where we wanted to go. So the strategic plan was something that I think was eye-opening for everybody to see what other people wanted, whether it was folks from Wilbraham or Hamden, but we as a community, a collective body, what we could agree on and what we couldn't agree on, and then what we ended up bringing as the final product. And I think he embodies what that document is, and he sees that there's a plan now, and we actually have a roadmap. And I think now it's up to John and Aaron to implement that, and that's where, if we need to ask for money to support that, then that's the plan, is the strategic plan. And
That's not what he said, though.
No, but he was saying that he would support if there was a need for additional funds. So the strategic plan, we know that there's going to be a call out and a need for different things to meet them. And as long as we're using that as that guiding flag of where we're going, that was the future, because that's supposed to be now, next year, the year after that, up to the next 5 years, and then we continue to adjust it as we need to. But it's not enough of a plan to say, this is where the money should go, this is how we want to do it, and so now we have to put money behind some of those action items.
I think we have to provide focus
And then,
for that plan, and we also have to provide a timeline for it.
yep.
And like I said, that's what I'm talking to multiple members of the finance committee, that they have expressed to me the same sentiment.
Can I make an amendment to the motion to increase E&D by $165,664 as opposed to the $200,000?
I'll second it, but I just want to hear the discussion.
So the 165,664, what that represents is if we take on the draconian cuts list, the elimination of the counselor at Green Meadows, 92,000, the increased student activity fees, 7,500, and we subtract the 66,164, what that would give you is a 34,336, and that's the delta between the 200,000 and the 165,664.
I'm under the impression that the agreement we had last night with both of the towns was that we'd be putting in an extra 200,000 from the.
But what we're doing is it's an increase, however, you're cutting
But there's $85,000.
by the 34,336.
Yes, but then we also have $85,000 that we have to come in with efficiencies, and that's where those would fall under.
But this right here only represents 66,064.
Yeah, and there's more, we're gonna have to figure it out. I mean, the difference was, what was it, 585, I think it was 580, right? 580,000. They were gonna come up with 3, we were coming up with 2, and then we had that $80,000 that we had to go and find efficiencies for that $80,000, and that's what those would have been.
We would be voting on a budget of 52,939,940. So all that would reflect would be the increase of E&D by 200,000, a net decrease of 66,164, and the Chapter 70 increase.
Maybe that's what it
really
was.
fast, just guess what I'm with it. My brain is not processing as fast as you're talking about it. So say those numbers back one more time.
So if we look, the next motion that would occur is we would increase the budget, or excuse me, decrease the budget from 53,006,104 to 52,939,940. So Sean, that would not reflect an $5,000, that would reflect a...
I might be wrong on the numbers. What were the numbers yesterday, Aaron? That they said that there was that the delta was 500, and what was the change?
That was, yeah, so I'm not sure I remember
I don't know that
exactly, but
anybody
there was a
I wrote it
delta.
down and I don't have the paper.
The delta.
What was it?
The delta.
581.70.
And then they were gonna put in the additional 300,000, and then the E&D, we were gonna use an additional 200,000, but
Right.
if just because we say 200,000, I would think that the number that goes to the budget, as long as it's as close to that, I don't think that's, it's in bad faith if the number isn't exactly 200,000, but I could be wrong.
Well, it's not changing the budget, right? It's not changing the budget of 52,939,940. So if we reduce the first portion from an E&D standpoint, our budget commitment is the same. So if we look at the numbers, it's net the same, Sean, as far as what the district committed. What we're doing is we're saying, no, we're going to drive another 34,336 in efficiencies.
Gotta slow down.
See, I'm not the only, you're just really good at numbers, but like,
So the true number that matters is the 52,939,940.
Right, so that's the new budget number.
That's the new
which is under
budget.
number
So
2 on
you
the
are,
budget.
so you are asking,
So that would stay 52,939,940. All I am saying is we need to pick up another 34,336 in efficiencies, and that therefore we would drive the E&D down by that amount, and then under line 2, in theory, you would see a net decrease of 66,164 plus 34,336. That's what I'm doing.
So for a net decrease of 66,164, we just have to increase that decrease to 81,070.
Where's
Based
the
on
81,070
conversations last
coming
night.
from?
Well, they said the delta was 500,
110.
5
580,170.
5,080, 170. There you go. I screwed up. So if we do that and then plus 20% for Hamden side, so maybe it's $100,000 that we need to cut the budget by?
Are you including the $83,760 increase from a Chapter 70 standpoint?
No, I'm not. I'm just decreasing from the total budget number in line 2 of the memorandum dated April 27th. The 6,104, and decrease that by the 80,170 plus 20% for Hamden, and that would be the efficiencies that we had promised. Right?
I'm not sure what the efficiency number that was promised. To me, I think the true number is probably what's the budget, and as long as it doesn't change Wilbraham's contribution, Hamden's contribution, and we're simply moving it from one bucket, i.e. E&D, to another bucket, i.e. efficiencies, it nets out.
So what would the amount of E&D that would be coming out be?
We would increase by, I think it's 100,
So we weren't gonna
165,
offset by-
664.
So instead of being 850, because we were increasing from 850 to 1,050,000. So what are you saying that amount would be? So am I subtracting from the million,
So
the
plus
46 number, the 34 number?
the new number would be 1,015,664.
Last 3 digits again? 664.
664.
Okay.
So what I have is, let me see.
Aaron and John, is that something that you guys can do? Well, we can talk about it, we have to make sure that they can implement it.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I guess I just need direction to know whether you're asking to add any more cuts as part of that, or do you want us to try to find it without doing any more reductions?
Well, I think that'll be up to you from a budgetary standpoint. I think we look at it, under the draconian cuts, the increase of parking, student activity, graduation, athletic fees reflects $7,500. So that right there, I was looking at it quickly, I would say, okay, there's $7,500. I don't know what we charge for facility rentals. That's probably another area I might look at. If everyone that uses our gyms is paying for it, and what does that look like? That's probably another area that doesn't impact students and would be increased revenue opportunities. I think at times we try really hard to be great neighbors, but sometimes we need to look out for ourselves and we need to charge people for the facilities.
So I guess what I would say is that I think the spirit of the agreement was to try to avoid making all of those cuts.
Yes.
I think if we did a reduction from the increased drawdown of E&D of 165, 664 instead of 200,000, and then we realized a $35,000 deficit, that would not be evident immediately. That would be something that would come up later in the year. We could always have a conversation about it later. I don't think reducing it by this amount now would cause us to have to implement any more reductions.
Thank you.
So I understand that this is something you guys can look to do without any student-facing
Correct.
reductions.
Without any, oh, as Member Karen said, I think we should still think about things like fees and other things like that, but not staff.
Yes, 100%. So there's a motion on the floor. Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, it's not
You're done.
So we're kind of just moving things around. John and Aaron, you're okay with Aaron?
I guess, I mean, so so we'd be changing the E&D offset to $1,015,664.
Yeah.
And then the operating budget would be revised to $52,905,604. Something has to give.
Yeah, I have 52,905, 891.50.
I have the same number.
Because if Wilbraham's
So
part
we need
is
to take, if we're decommitting 34,336, right, out of E&D,
yeah,
then the budget, in order for the assessments to remain the same, the budget needs to decrease by that amount. Maybe my math was, I got fat fingers.
no, maybe I won't.
52,939, 940 less 34,336. I come up with 52,905,604. So the E&D offsets the assessments. When we're talking about we're just going to have to find 34,000 savings. That's going to have to come out of the budget. It's got to come from somewhere. So we paid it for the budget side of things.
You're really getting good at
And I
this
guess
hand
it would just be incumbent upon us to figure out where that money's going to come
It's
from.
so cute.
Hey, based on everything we went through, I understand what Patrick's trying to do, and I follow some of the math. I'm leery about it. The only reason why is because we talked at the meeting last night about what we were going to do, and I do think it's disingenuous if we change the number. We're talking about what, $35,000, right? It's not chump change, but I don't want finance, advisory, or the select boards from either town to think that we were disingenuous in our offer to offer that money.
Right, I agree. And if we can find those savings and add back into the E&D for next year, great. But I think that we need to put up that $200,000 that we said that we would put up. It was part of the agreement from last night.
So I guess I could also say along the lines of what I was just saying, E&D probably wouldn't be the first fund that we spent from. It would probably be one of the last funds we spent from. So if we had savings such that we didn't have to spend the whole $200,000, we wouldn't go and do that. So that would be another way of achieving the same impact. It could be direction to us to spend up to $200,000, but to try really hard to not spend that full amount, knowing what we're looking at in the next year. That would be in conformity with the agreement that was made last night, and also be in conformity with the concerns that are being raised right now, which I would just add are concerns that we put in the memo too about thinking about next year.
So I guess that's my frustration. I hear what you're saying. We've talked about the fees 2 meetings ago. Nothing has happened. That's why I'm making this, trying to tie a number to it, because I don't see action. We sit there and say, okay, we got an approved budget. We talked about the fees, and if we look at it, they're still the same, and it's a month. So when we look at it, I'd feel a whole lot better if we said we went through it. Here's what we did. We went and found $7,200. So John, I hear you, and in complete transparency, it's going to be another committee's issue next year. But I haven't seen proof that we've taken the action that we need to be disciplined with our actions to ensure that we truly are asking the town for the very last dollar. And that's what I'm trying to drive. And if you're saying you're going to do it, we need to see the action, right? Well done's better than well said, and I just haven't seen it yet. And that's the frustration that I have from a fiscal standpoint.
So I'll apologize if I'm adding to the frustration. It was in that list of things that was, we're trying to avoid. However, it is on the agenda tonight to discuss. Any fee increases need to be approved by the school committee, so I thought we were going to have a conversation about that tonight.
Yeah, but to Patrick's point, though, I'll be honest, we've tried to have this conversation, this predates you, of trying to adjust and see what we can do with fees, similar to the frustration that the Wilbraham Finance brought up about the fact that why aren't sports self-funding, that to some degree. And again, we've been asking that question and there's never really been a solid answer. So I think now we're just trying to say it loud enough.
Sure.
So that it's addressed. Sorry?
Let's call it. I'll vote for it.
Did we just have someone here that just say that they couldn't afford lacrosse, but because of the boosters and being on the team, they got into a college and now they run their own business, that he didn't think that he wasn't in lacrosse, he wouldn't have went to college and he wouldn't have run his own business and he wouldn't be sitting in front of us today? I'm just saying, we have to be really careful about what you're talking about here. We just had an example of everything against what you're just talking about.
Youth sports are a multi-billion-dollar business. The fees that we charge are minuscule compared to what people are paying. Hockey, $450. Let's look at what ice time is, and for anyone that has a kid playing hockey, I find it hard to believe that anybody pays anywhere close to $450 until they come to Minnetonka Regional High School. But why don't we call it? Let's vote.
So we're voting on the amendment?
No.
Cheryl.
I want to hear what,
On the amendment.
I want to hear what.
It would be reducing the E&D number from 200,000 down by 34,336.
Sean?
No.
Lisa? No. Patrick?
No.
Laura?
No.
Myself?
Back to the original motion. Motion is to increase the amount of E&D offset from $350,000 to $1,050,000.
Roll call. Bill?
Aye.
Cheryl? No. Sean?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
Lisa? Aye. Laura?
Aye.
Myself? Aye. Motion carries.
Can we please instruct the superintendent, or encourage, not instructing the superintendent, that $200,000 is the last $200,000 of this budget gets spent? Is that the will of the committee?
So be it.
Not my will.
Sean?
Yeah. Oh, I make a motion to revise the school district budget from $53,006,104 to $52,939,940.
Second.
A net decrease of $66,164 due to efficiencies recognized since the original budget vote. Right?
So last night, this was referenced as $100,000. How are we now at $66,164? with the elimination of a position, excuse me, I believe it's 2 positions, as a result of the 7th grade at Green Meadows closure.
I think the 100,000 we were talking about that came up last night was an arbitrary amount. I mean, I didn't come up with that number. It was a number that was a guess at the time. People were throwing around very broad figures. We also recognize that we have needs that are moving from Green Meadows to the middle school. And we don't really know what those needs are. We are losing a 7th grade at Green Meadows, but we're picking up a lot of students at the middle school, and what are those needs going to look like? This seemed just like an amount. It balanced things out, and it was responsible to some of what we talked about.
So what positions are no longer at Green Meadows, and what positions will be added at Wilbraham Middle School?
So there'll be some adjustments to the teaching staff. There'll be a reduction in Spanish teaching position from 0.6 to 0.2. There'll be a reduction of the social studies position. There'll be a reduction of an administrative position, all at Green Meadows. There'll be an addition of a counseling position at the middle school.
So an administrative
But I have to say that a lot of that, the social studies position is a part-time position, so it's not a full FTE.
So what's the dollar amount for that?
Don't know.
Is it 6 positions?
So just simple math. If it's an administrator, it's a 0.2 and a 0.6. Is that what you said?
0.2, 0.6, 0.4.
And an administrator?
No, the administrator's in that. I'm sorry.
The Spanish teacher.
Sorry, 0.2, 0.6, and 1.0.
So we're at 1.8, and we're saying 1.8, and that's
But you have to add 1.0 into the middle school. So the difference of all of that.
His point.
But wasn't it considered like a wash? Like, wasn't that the spot that we said it really wasn't going to count because it was getting moved from one to another?
So
What I said is you don't have the full savings because you have additional increases as you need to make in the middle school, but you do have some increases.
Okay.
That's, I mean, I think in part the reason that you have this number is because we're working into trying to back into 1.3 million instead of just building it forward based on what we originally presented. We're trying to make everything balance out.
We're also, I mean, it was not so long ago that all those transfers happened. There's going to be some looking at student needs and evaluating what needs to happen for all of those students to now move over, and for that, all of the grades needs to move over. It's hard to say exactly what the outcome of that is going to be when all is said and done.
sorry, I'm still confused. So in the draconian cuts, we say elimination of the counselor at Green Meadows.
Yep.
This would leave one counselor at the school, $92,000. How many counselors after this will we have at Green Meadows?
One.
Wait, hang on. You understand at the meeting last night, we made a pledge not to do as many of those draconian cuts as we could possibly do.
I understand, but I'm using that because it's in here at $92,000. So right now we have 2 counselors there. We have a principal, we have an assistant principal. So what will the administrative staff from a counseling principal, assistant principal standpoint look like at Green Meadows following the closure of the 7th grade?
So you'll have a math and science teacher, you'll have a humanities teacher, you'll have a 0.2 Spanish teacher, you'll have a science teacher. You'll have, so part of your reductions are reductions of the 0.4 from the 0.6 that the Spanish teacher currently is, the reduction of the counselor from the Green Meadows, the reduction of the social studies teacher, which I believe is 0.6 right now, reduction of an administrator. On the other side, you'll be adding a counselor back into the middle school.
So you said loss of an administrator, loss of a counselor.
Correct.
So the counselor is the net position, it's not the administrator.
It's not a full FTE counselor position at Green Meadows.
So on this,
The
it was
administrative fall
reflected,
into
this
that,
would
is
be,
that 0.6, is that part of the 0.6 instead of it being What did you say? He said 0.4 for Spanish, 0.6 for social studies. There was a council and a reduction of administrative, but there was only those 2 points that we're given. So how does the administrative position fall into that? Are they like a 0.2, a 0.4?
Or is it a 1.0?
Okay.
And it counts as a 1.0?
Correct.
So then why is it a reduction of only 0.8? Why wouldn't it be a reduction of 1.8?
It might be 1.1.
So then how does 1.8 only reflect 66,164?
Because, as I explained, we're trying to match up to the 1.3 and the 200,000 that was voted last night. At this point, what we're doing is trying to make all of the numbers net out to zero.
If we change it, the budget lower, then the assessments to the towns change.
And so we had a conversation last night about what the assessments would look like.
Right.
So to the point of,
So to the earlier point, if there are additional savings beyond, say, that 66,000, we're trying to be prudent in planning for potential needs at Wilbraham Middle School for those additional students. That money, if we do have efficiencies, that money will flow directly into E&D for next year. So, E&D is always, when we talk about, the last money we spend, that is always, it is what is left over at the end of the year once we spent all of our money. So if we can decrease what we spend, that will be more money into E&D. So it is our hope that the needs don't rise to the level of needing that much more support, say, at the middle school. But we don't, all of those transfers didn't happen in January, they happened a couple weeks ago, right? And there's an evaluative process and a process to figure out the needs of those students and how we're going to manage the needs of those
but
students.
you knew those, so most of those letters came before a couple weeks ago, am I correct? So you knew that those requests were going to come. So I'm just saying it should have been planned, right, prior to the meeting when we voted on that. Because people have to put them in advance. It wasn't like they just came in and then that week we voted on them.
However, we didn't know how you were going to vote on it.
No, I understand, but I mean, it's kind of like you have to model good and the bad, right? If we prepare for the worst, but hope for the best.
So it's all a fascinating discussion, and certainly it's one that, for most people out there, doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Again, I've said this multiple times, like running a budget in a school district is a heck of a lot different than running a budget in a regular business. I mean, there are literally things that change by the day. And so, and looking at where John and Aaron are coming from, trying to back into what has been given to them as the parameters of the budget, we can say, well, you've got 92,000 to the plus, but what Aaron is saying is, we don't know what our needs are. And I would certainly say that we would err on the side of over planning, and if we can back away from that, we can. Much like, where we looked at transportation funding, and we are probably on the low side of what our transportation reimbursement is going to be, because you don't want to get caught with your pants down. So it's a multi-headed hydra. There's a lot of moving parts, and they're all snarling and breathing fire. I move the question.
Second.
Simple as we get good in the budget. That's fine.
Aye.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And myself, aye. So now, just so I'm clear, so I can communicate if it's okay with the people that I know are going to be asking me, these are the numbers that are going to be the assessment, correct?
Yes,
Let us award
yeah,
like
we
tomorrow.
will get assessment figures. So the letters that are attached, so this is, again, we're kind of flying blind in terms of we thought we knew what they wanted, and maybe this is what they want this time. You see some draft numbers. These are the numbers. I've run through them and checked them today. We tried to get these done quickly today so that you'd have at least to look at. So there are two separate letters. There is an operating assessment letter and then a separate capital assessment letter to each town based on you'll see there are some items that are blank. I didn't know what your vote was going to be on things like the budget. We don't know what the certified mail number will be, but we'll send that by email and certified mail. And then there comes the question of, when and how do we send the capital letter? So, it's two separate letters. Do we send them all now? You've already voted the capital, but I think it reiterates, these are the capital items that we're looking at.
I believe if we don't want them to vote on the capital for town meeting, we should not send the capital letter just yet.
What was he saying about?
No,
Because we're going to wait until September.
well, we agreed that the two items that we would remove from that capital plan would be the air conditioners and the railing. The other items, I would suggest that once the dust clears from town meeting, we bring it up and then we have that discussion. We will then meet with finance and advisory through the subcommittee, talk about it, and, gain some more guidance from there. Aaron will be able to give us some guidance as far as, where do those numbers fit? And, are these things have to haves, like to have, or not really? But, and I think most of them are going to fit into the has to haves.
I think my point is we shouldn't send
The second page.
the capital letter until after.
No, I wouldn't apply the water.
Otherwise, then it's still there.
We decided to take all that off the table.
Okay. Just wanted to-
Fair enough.
Yeah,
We're not submitting a capital budget, capital assessment at this point?
No, and again, that was one of the,
Yep.
it was one of the discussions that we had last night, because there really is no such thing as a capital budget when it comes to this school.
Yeah.
So state law tells us that those items have to be included in the overall assessment and split about. And that was the guidance that we got from attorney's meeting.
Okay, so moving on. Graduation. Oh, are we done with the budget? We're done.
Yeah.
We're done. Okay, graduation. The date of graduation is Friday, June 3rd? June 2nd, sorry. At Symphony Hall. Has everyone decided if they're going? They responded? And then there was a question about regalia, whether or not we are, as a committee, deciding whether or not to want to wear anything.
We could save some money in the budget.
It wouldn't be the budget, it's actually student activities.
One less number for Eric to audit.
What is the cost of the
So-
regalia?
It's about $25.
So honestly, the only opinion I had about this though was, I know that there was talk about putting the school committee back on the stage, and I will tell you that it is a distraction from the graduation itself if we have to keep getting up and getting down, standing up, sitting down, standing up, sitting down. The only thing I guess I would ask is there a way that, I realize that we want the seats to be for the families, can we be off to the back corner somewhere or behind where the band is? And I only say that because the number of people who commented after the graduation last year about why did we, it looked like kind of a circus of us getting on, getting off, getting on, getting off. I mean, I'm happy to stand someplace or lean someplace up on the side, but it's really about the students graduating and their families and not so much about us. I'm happy to high five them, hug them, and wish them well, and be on the stage at the moment after they get their diploma, but I just think for the whole graduation, to be in the middle of the stage is not necessarily the right thing we need to be. But that's just my opinion.
So,
Yeah.
I would say I probably feel exactly the opposite. The only reason why, and I've said this multiple times, is it's a celebration, right? And when you go to a wedding, there's a line of people that are congratulating the bride and groom, right? It's a way, in my eyes, and of the graduations that I've attended, that I've been in, I would tell you that having dignitaries on the stage and having them sort of shake your hand as you're walking across the stage and saying congratulations, I just think that it's a very nice touch to the graduation. I've never been obviously if we could arrange the seats a little bit differently so that we're not getting up and down to get out of the way of the band. I think that's, if you do that, then great. I don't see where you can do that because the band takes up so much space and we're kind of just off to the side anyways. But I think it adds an awful lot of sort of an official appearance of the graduation. I think putting us in the audience
If we're taking up 7 seats, those are 7 family members that can't attend graduation.
I look at it as a responsibility of the school committee. I mean, we are here, we're talking about education, and the culmination of everything that we're doing is graduation. And to be there and standing up for the students, you know, it's important. I don't need people to see my ugly mug. They need to see the school committee, you know, there as representatives of them, elected representatives, and to be there, because this is everything that we're doing. I've been to every single graduation. I think most of us here have, right? It's to be there, to represent, to stand up, and I don't mind getting up and moving off. It's a respectful thing, so they can see the band, and we come when we sit back down. I have no problem. Maybe I should do a little more getting up and getting down during the day. I don't think it's anything that is something that is like, oh my gosh, we have to get up, we have to get down, the whole thing is ruined.
I just think that if...
I'm still speaking. I don't think it's an issue. I don't think it's a circus at all. I think it's really important that we're there, and there you go, I'm finished now.
What are your thoughts on that?
Again, it's us being there and showing what we care about education and our own education, and that we're standing there. And when these students are walking by at every graduation I've been at, and granted I'm old, everyone has had the regalia out of respect for those who are getting their diploma and they're moving on. They are wearing the robe. They are wearing the hats. You know, the least that we can do is also wear our robes and show our education. Again, I think it's a responsibility, taking it to the fact of being just showing them that this is the importance of education, because we are all educated and we are up here, we are representing education. It's something I feel strongly about. And I can pay for, I mean, I have my own robe because I'm a justice of the peace, you know.
I kept it.
And,
I don't have a robe, but I have a hood. I just need a robe.
yeah, it's funny, my hood has got wet.
So
I can buy my own if you want.
So I think basically I look at it as it's kind of an all or none proposition. I mean, if you got like 7 people sitting in street clothes on the stage, and they kind
I'm
of look like...
not stating street clothes.
Yeah.
I mean, we can certainly make sure that are wearing, you know, the appropriate clothing, but...
But I think, you know, if we're looking at, an appropriate uniform to wear on the stage, you know,
Right.
certainly to have that. And I mean, the history of academic regalia is very interesting.
Yeah.
And it definitely traverses cultures throughout the world. And to me anyways, dressing up in the gown and and wearing the hood, it's a sign of respect, not for yourself and not for your position. It's a sign that you respect those students, that they've done the work, and they have committed themselves, and they have graduated. And I think that is I think that's probably the strongest message that we can send.
I actually agree, but I want to edit one thing that Bill said, just from my own perspective. I think it is a symbol of respect for yourself. It is a symbol of respect for the position. And, of course, it is most importantly a symbol of respect to the students. So, you know, it's just a slight variation of what you said. It comes down to respect and honoring people and dressing the part.
I can honor the students in a dress or pants or something nice. And I think that it's about them, and I don't think, in my personal opinion, I don't think that what I'm wearing, I don't think they care. I don't think that they respect me anymore for wearing any, like, the gown or anything. So it's warm up there, really. And I just don't think that it adds anything to, I don't think that it impacts their experience here at Minnetonka Regional High School or the district.
The teachers impact, I would rather, if I had to give up the spot on the stage to stand on the side somewhere, even if I had to bring my own folding chair, I would rather see the teachers that have helped them get to that point be on that stage, because those are the ones, when you see the awesome collage that Steve Hale has done on the backdrop, that they are hooting and hollering for all those teachers who have wished them well, to help them get there, because at the end of the day, it's those people who have helped them get to that point, besides their families, to graduate. I mean, we do play an important role. I just don't know that we have to literally be on the stage the whole entire time. I don't see any reason why we couldn't come onto the stage at the time of the diploma handout, but I just don't think it adds any value to just sit there and have to keep getting up and getting on and off the stage.
So we should probably, come to consensus on how we'd like to proceed. So one, if people have not responded as to whether or not they're attending graduation on Friday, June 2nd, to do so.
Who is attending? Okay, so we're all going to.
So we just have to talk to
That's
Steve and
great.
make sure that his people know, because there's a Google Doc, because he had to tell me that.
Yes, it's just I had some questions about it, but I didn't get any response, so I did not fill it out.
So the regalia portion I think we should come to consensus and vote on whether or not we would like to continue to wear it or.
Will you be able to have regalia for that? I think, are we allowed to invite Steve to this discussion? Steve, are you happy to come over and have a conversation with us?
Does it impact your graduation if you don't wear this?
Please, you can talk louder so you can hear you.
Steve, what's your personal opinion?
What's your professional opinion?
We value it.
I'm speaking.
What do you want us to do?
You can come closer.
I've done 14, this will be my 14th graduation.
Wow.
We've always had regalia.
Okay.
I feel that it's a nice professional touch to the ceremony. That's my opinion. But we do.
Can you put us in the corner?
So if it's based on what the ask of us not necessarily being on the stage, is there a way in which we could
Or
still
what?
participate but maybe not?
What's
sit
your
right next to you?
preference?
We can do whatever you'd like us to do. That's not an issue. We can organize it anyway.
You understand that Steve is still going to be sitting on the stage. John is still going to be sitting on the stage.
As they
The
should.
students are still going to be sitting on the stage. So whether it's this many people or this many people, there is still going to be a line of people sitting on the stage. I can wait out in the alley, not in the alley, in the wings and behind the curtains.
It's going to be in the alley, street
I just think,
clothes.
no. And then when you want us to
Aging the
shake
black-
hands, we better come out.
Blackjack table, sure.
But I see that as being like a vaudeville act, where like all of a sudden the music starts playing, and then all of a sudden like all these people in costumes come out, and they're like, it's like, where are they? You know? I mean, it's if we're going to be part of the ceremony, like I said, I've spoken to so many parents. I mean, I see a lot of kids from this district, and I've spoken to a lot of parents about the graduation ceremony. Asking them about, what did you think of the ceremony? What did you think? And never asking them directly, because I don't want to lead them in the question. I never heard anybody say anything like, God, you look like a bunch of idiots up
That's
there
exactly
getting
how
up
they
and
came up
down."
to me after the graduation. What is with you guys getting on and off the stage? Like, what was that all about? I was like, that's just how this goes. I don't know. This is my first time doing it. So,
Well,
inside.
That's not how it has always gone. In the past,
We just stay there.
either people, because the students don't get up. In the past, what happens is everyone turns and watches or listens.
The reason that we got up was so that people in the front rows and stuff, the students themselves, can see what's going on without having to look through us. It was just out of respect for, again, for the students.
I'm not saying it as implying that it's disrespectful that we get on and off the stage, but I just think it created a lot of just a lot of unnecessary back and forth. That was all.
So it sounds like, is everyone in agreement with sitting on the stage wearing regalia?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
Are you able to get regalia for those that haven't responded that they're going yet?
I am. Could I ask, is this a annual decision, or are we deciding? I'll be honest, I sent the memo in March. The regalia takes 9 weeks, or that's what the company would like. I now have 5. I will get it.
Amazon.
I will get it. It's not a problem. What we had to
If
do
you
last
can't, I'll buy
year,
leases on Amazon.
the warehouse is in West Springfield, so we drive over and grab it and that kind of thing. But if this is it an annual intent of the committee, or could this be, this is the way we do it kind of thing?
It should be an annual, I mean, this should be how we do it. You know, it's been how we've done it, and I think it should continue to be how we do it. And I can purchase my own, I mean, I have this and 2 more, so I have 3. I can pay for my own regalia.
We got, well, I
so-
know you said you have yours, right?
I have my robe,
There's so, I'm sorry.
not the hood.
Okay, which is,
When you're planning a graduation, I venture to guess there is a constellation of scenarios and just so much that you have to plan for. I think this is one less thing you have to worry about. The consistency of, yep, you're gonna have the school committee, you're gonna be sitting right there. And then you know that's gonna be there.
I think it's important to note that the person that's coordinating it, and of course, I'm working with that person, is brand new.
Is new, yeah.
So,
It's a good thing we paid that deposit last year.
yes.
It'll be coming to us in July to make the next one.
Thank you for your
Okay.
input and your feedback.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
We are going to discuss.
Lisa will send you her,
14
I'm
years?
not, because I
No,
sent
no,
you.
Lisa, I sent it to you.
You did?
I got it today.
What?
You got it
I
today.
got it today. And I sent it to Aaron.
Oh, okay. Thank you, because
of
I've
course.
never experienced it
As
before,
soon
so I
as
don't know what
you-
I'm doing.
As soon as you sent it, I contacted the company, they just sent it to me today, I sent it.
And I put it in it's in your binder. I put it,
Oh, okay.
I shared it in the drive with them and I put it
Okay,
in your
perfect.
binder.
Athletic
Thank you.
Of course.
participation schedule.
Sure. So I was asked to gather some information about the athletic fees. I thought it might be instructive to have the number of participants in the athletic fees collected by sport. I will say that I was going from individual team rosters, so I was at hundreds of lines. I was hand counting, so there might be some small errors here, so I apologize for that. And I'll also say that we're still in the process of collecting some fees, so this may not be the final number, but this is where things stand right now. Now, we have had a conversation about raising athletic fees. As we heard Ron say tonight, I don't know if maybe it's accurate that we haven't had a fee increase in 15 years. Part of our plan for closing the gap did include a 10% athletic fee increase. So this would be a time when I would seek some direction from the committee on whether you think it's a responsible thing to do. I think we would, on Principal Hale's recommendation, not just raise athletic fees, but raise all the student fees by the same amount. So that would be student activity, graduation fee. Am I missing any other? Parking?
By the same percentage or the same dollar amount?
Percentage. Because these, as you probably have inferred from looking at these numbers, all these different sports have different fees based on the cost of the sport. We also have a few things, I'm sorry, we also have a few things that, impact athletics this year. One is the change to the statewide tournament schedule, which you mentioned before, which has dramatically increased the cost of transportation for athletics. And then we have had a few sports that have gone to additional officials, so that increases the officiating for sports.
Can I ask that maybe we bump this down to finance and operations, so we can kind of have a more intimate discussion about sort of the fees. One of the things I'm just worried about again is, so built into that, the draconian cuts was that 10% increase in fees. I want to make sure that we have fidelity to what we talked about last night. I don't want to just, I don't disagree as far as the user fees are concerned, but I don't want to just jump into saying, okay, well, we said we weren't going to do it, but we're going to do it. I think what I'd like to do is bring it back to finance and operations, so that we can kind of kick the tires on it, sort of get a feel, from Hamden and Wilbraham side as far as, what we can do. I think it's a great kickoff to the next budget season to look at, hey, so this is what we're doing for efficiencies. We're looking at ways that we can raise revenues. The question that I had is, and it's for Aaron. So Aaron, all of these fees, they go into the athletic revolving account.
Yep.
Correct? Now, the athletic revolving account is used to pay for uniforms, transportation, etc. Now, we've always carried a positive balance in that account. And yet, you know, the other thing was during COVID, obviously, it just got depleted.
And we're in a negative right now, as I shared last week.
Yeah.
You know, participation rates are still coming up post-COVID, and COVID really did a number on that possibility.
Now, just say, for instance, that the athletic revolving account had $1 million excess, okay, just a hypothetical. We have $1 million excess, hypothetically. Would that revolving account be able to offset any expenses on the general ledger? So would there be expenses that we would take out?
Our general ledger?
Out of our operating budget?
Not typically, no.
Okay. So this exists for itself. It won't add any money to the operating budget.
It's a little like food services, right? So it's a special use account. We can't use those funds, and honestly, when there's a shortfall, we have to cover it, which is it puts us in a tough position, right? So at the end of the year,
You can't use it,
right?
but if it falls in the negative,
Right,
then you have
it makes
to
it hard
replenish
to carry over. So things from year to year.
So how do you do that from an accountant's perspective in the district? Because that athletic revolving account, so do you just sort of put the money in to pay the bills, and there's an IOU that goes with it to say that they have to?
Yeah, I mean, what we will do at the end of the year is we start the closing process. We'll journal entry items onto the general fund. At the same time as where we'll talk about this next meeting, that we're going to begin the process of journal entering items onto things like the ESSER grant.
Mm-hmm.
So journal entries is this nice way of, knowing you've got the money, spending the money, and then sort of transferring it over to that alternate pocket where you have the money.
Yeah.
Some of it is also about seeing how things play out, right? We wanted to see how some of our special ed costs played out before we went. We also wanted to give athletics a chance to see where things ended up. So as John talked about, a lot of the cost has to do with where your teams end up in the tournament, right? If none of your teams make the tournament, your transportation costs are much lower because you're not traveling to Nantucket or wherever.
But when we have bus costs, that gets pulled out of the revolving.
We also didn't predict for the rise in fuel costs. So we have a relatively fixed contract with LPVEC for our regular buses, but when we have to hire them for additional buses, those rates are flexible, right? So they pass on the cost of fuel to us. We also do have cases where you have to hire coach buses or buses from other companies because LPVEC simply can't provide the buses for you. So it gets a little challenging along the way.
But so like looking at like one, just for example, the boys and girls skiing, there's 10 total participants, but I know the buses alone to transport them to where they're going to ski is not cheap.
Nope.
But I don't even know if that's enough to cover that. So I mean, at what point do you make sure you have enough participants to actually run the program?
Therein lies the rub.
I'd like to make the point, if I could get 3 of these are dead.
Recollection.
All right. So, yeah, I'm just trying to look at our families. I'm trying to look at our students, right? And they're in this, and they are participating in the sports. They are doing everything that they can, and we are trying to support them. And we want to support those. We want to support the drama club. We want to support the band. We want to support the sports. I would rather see an increase in ticket prices for non-students. I would like to see maybe having season tickets for a sport, or maybe even a sport pass, like those passes that we get, school committee, that we can go to any function. I'd like to maybe offer some of those and let people from the community purchase those as a way of supporting our sports teams. you know, rather than having it fall on the families of the students and the students themselves, can we maybe think a little bit out of the box and see if we can maybe spread this over our community as a way of supporting them that have devoted their lives, and as Patrick has said, has spent so much money on you know, rink fees and such like that they come here with years and years and years of experience, and they're representing the high school, that it would be really great if we could support them rather than, hey, let's charge them.
Well, another good point was brought up at last night's meeting when there was the suggestion that if there's the potential for a program to not be able to have enough students, then maybe we could reach out to the recreation departments of both communities to see that there's a way to offset or maybe create some interest. But I don't know, based on the age levels, if they're not doing it at the high school level, how you can get someone at the community level to do it, but maybe instead of being able to do a club at the school, then maybe they do it at the town level only. But I'm just surprised that.
Or are you saying, I thought they were saying have the rec run the school project.
That's what they suggested last night.
So you just co-op, right? So if we look at it, we don't have a girls hockey program. That's a co-op girls hockey program. Interestingly enough, Long Meadow's fee is $600 for girls hockey. As an FYI, did play alongside our girls hockey players. That's another conversation. So that's the way you handle it. If you don't have enough numbers, you can co-op, which MIA allows, and there's a whole process and procedure for it. That's a great example. I don't know why we are charging $150 less than another school where the players skate alongside each other as part of a co-op team.
So, I think, oh, sorry, I got a microphone. We have too many over on the side.
Because Sean's hogging them all.
So,
I have a collection.
So, again, I don't want to belabor this because the hour is getting late and we still have much of the agenda to go, but I would just say if we just kick this back down to budget and operations, finance operations, we can look at it. Just to clarify Sean's point, or Mara's point, it was actually raised specifically for 9th grade sports. Mr. Ducey had brought up the idea that we could cut 9th grade, but you could integrate it into the rec program. And the problem that I see with that is that you know, the rec program is not a school affiliated program per se, and so I'm assuming would not have MIA recognition. And so you would not be able to, even if you had a 9th grade football team and the rec department was able to fund it, they wouldn't be able to schedule against anybody because they're not part of the school district. So, but so we just kick it back down and we'll.
Yeah, sounds good.
Do we not have a boys tennis team?
I think there is too. It may have been a counting, just clarify, I was trying to put this together.
Okay.
Yeah, we have both times.
Is everyone in?
Yeah.
Shut it down. Send it to finance. So. Can we have one more meeting before we finish for the year?
Yeah, I'd like to do it after town meeting. I'd like to just,
Yeah.
Well, we also have the resolutions that we want to work on. I've already started drafting those up, so we can function, get that language going, come back here.
There's some conversation about that.
Where does Appendix B get paid out of? Where does Appendix B get paid out of?
Where does what get paid out?
Appendix B.
Appendix B.
Attendance fees?
No, Appendix B.
Oh, Appendix B, I'm so sorry. Those are first paid out of the general fund, so we have that amount in the general fund. That's really what that's intended for. So the Appendix B athletic stipends come out of that general fund athletic fee.
So when we're seeing the athletic number that you're showing in the red right now, that includes all of Appendix B as well?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Only one more person said it.
So, school choice.
So I was asked to gather some information about school choice, and as well as to bring the information that we had gathered from the survey we had done of families who had choiced in and choiced out of the district. So just to take you first through the quantitative data, The first item in your packet is school choice trends in enrollment and tuition. That goes back to the beginning of the program in 1996 and goes to FY17. These lag a few years because it takes a few years for the numbers to get certified and then come back up through DESI's reporting portal. But you can see that these are what the trends have been in terms of students and in terms of tuition. You know, one thing I would point out is, you know, it seems to be a strong trend of increasing number of students placing out starting around 2018, and some decreased choicing in. The other thing I would point out, because I know it's been discussed many times, is what the impact of the special education increment is. You can see in both our receiving and our sending, it's never just the number times 5,000. It's always some other amount. That's because the increment is playing into the money we're receiving and the money we're paying out. That's why that happens. There's, in both the students who we receive and the students who we send out, there is the $5,000 that we pay as sort of the baseline, but then we also receive or pay a special education increment. Just to give you an example that might be sort of easy to follow.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So then the next piece, and this one is up to date a little bit farther because this is just the number of students, and the number of students is known before the actual final accounting is done of the expenses. This one goes from FY 2008 to FY 23, and so you can see the blue line represents the number of students we're receiving, and the red is the number of students sending out. So most of that is a replication of what you see in the other table. It just carries forward the actual enrollment numbers a couple more years. Or one more year, actually. Questions about that before I go on to the qualitative?
Interesting to see what the COVID numbers look like.
Okay then, moving on to the qualitative data, I think just to stay true to my training and methodological purity, I have to say there is no rule of small numbers. Whenever you have a sample size of under 100, you really want to try to get all 100 if you want to know what the mood of the group is. We don't have that, so what I can report to you are the reasons chosen by people who wanted to disclose the reasons that they chose. There might be something that we call non-response bias. The people who didn't send back survey responses might have had very different reasons from the ones who did respond. We don't know. It's just an unknown. It's always a problem with these surveys. However, I can tell you what some of the trends are. So we mailed 107 surveys for students who were choiced into the district. We received 36 of them back. We asked 2 questions. The first question was, what was your most important reason for your decision to have your child leave your previous school? The top one was school ended in 8th grade. Those are primarily students coming from parochial schools that ended in the 8th grade and didn't want to go on to the next level, which in many cases would involve changing the town where their student was being educated. The next 2, which were both equally similar in terms of number of responses, was not feeling that the previous school was safe or having concerns about student discipline. That was other students acting out in school. And then the next one was wanted larger classes and more school varied programs. So a lot of them are coming from districts that were dealing with declining enrollment and wanted to be in a bigger district. So then other things that were sort of less prevalent in the data were school didn't have a strong athletic program, so they wanted something with more athletic options. And then ironically, people coming from larger classes who wanted smaller class sizes. So maybe we had sort of a Goldilocks size of classes. Wanted a better learning environment. The student wasn't learning in the prior school. The prior school lacked AP programs, lack of communication from the previous school, inconsistent quality of teaching or curriculum in the previous school, wanting better opportunity or didn't agree with school policies showed up all with low levels of frequency. The other question we asked was, what was the most important reason for choosing the Hamden-Wilbraham Regional School District to educate your child? The top 3 reasons there were that the Hamden-Wilbraham Regional School District provides better academics or has higher standards, the positive reputation of our district, and the athletic program. And then some things that occurred with less frequency were their district provided a safer learning environment, that we had a smaller class or school size, that it was located close to home. That came up quite a bit because there was no transportation provided. Extracurricular offerings. Alumni wanted children to have the same experience they had. The district had better facilities. The district provided better programming, internship opportunities, AP classes, vocational education opportunities, larger school population, or agreed with district policies. That's all there. Then we also sent surveys out to families that choiced out. We mailed 48. We only received 4 back, so an even lower response rate. And there we just flipped the question. So we asked, what was the reason that you had your child leave our district? 1 reported having an experience with bullying. 1 didn't actually experience bullying, but was told the district didn't have an effective response to bullying, homophobia, or transphobia. 1 was to keep the sibling with another student, and 1 because the child was placed in a foster home. And then we asked, so why did you select the district that your child is currently attending? We had only 1 response on that, and it was feeling that the other district was more responsive to issues of bullying, homophobia, and transphobia. So that was the result of both the quantitative and qualitative data.
Any questions?
No, thanks for putting that together.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the sample size is
Yep.
limiting, but it definitely gives you a little bit of an insight as to what's going on in people's minds.
It's interesting to see though, right? So we had about 100% increase from 16 to 17. And then if you go through, then we had about 100% increase from, call it 17 to 21, and we've stayed consistently there from school choicing out. Right, where typically that's quite low, and then if you look at it from 17 on, we've seen a significant jump. And that was
Harkens to the point that,
50%.
having received
14 to 15.
more responses from people that choiced out, and give us more insight as to why they're choicing out.
Would anyone like to make public comment?
Just a question about that. Moving forward, John, I don't know if you can do this. When a student choices out, obviously their files go with them, which means they have to pick them up in the district. Can you have them fill out the survey when they do that and make that part of their exit from the district? We ask
Sure.
them to fill this out.
Sure, we can invite them to do that.
Maybe when people come in, choice in.
Well, I think,
What about our students when they leave?
so no, that's what I'm saying. So it would basically be,
That's what he's saying.
But basically, when those records either come into the district or leave the district, part of their intake or outtake process is basically looking at, have that as part of the paperwork that they have to do in order to get the records.
And maybe even part of the application for school choice in to have it that they answer those 2 questions.
Well, I don't think you could condition it on it because.
No, not condition, but have
you
a
could
2 question on
invite
the
them and say,
application.
we'd really like to get your input.
Yeah.
We want to know why you're choosing us. We want to know what it was about your experience here that makes you want to leave. We can definitely.
When we were at 5 or 6 students, I think, again, sample size is low. We'll look at 40 students that are choicing out of our district. It's a pretty high number.
It's a whole classroom. Almost 2.
2.
Big lot.
Yeah.
What's the public educated on the side?
All right, move on to subcommittee updates. Cheryl, we'll start with you with the curriculum subcommittee.
Yes, well, we need to meet right after this meeting. We have to take Lisa with the shoes available, and the 3 of us can meet to go over the middle school program of studies. We can vote on it.
planning committee. So at our last meeting, Dr. Provost shared that there are districts that are building schools using the 8 to 12 model, and they find it beneficial to include students. They find it beneficial to students to include 8th graders with older grades and extracurricular activities. There is a superintendent of an 8 to 12 district that he spoke with, and he has invited us, the school committee, to come tour and spend the day viewing that model option just up by the Cape, so potentially it could be in congruent with
So,
the
yeah, it's
SC conference.
Yeah, it's the opposite of what we thought, like keep the students separate, and they were saying, no, integrate the students is even better. So that was a big eye-opener for me.
We also
What
discussed.
district is that?
And then, and then if we go to the thing on the Cape, again, this year, he said there were like four other districts, 8 to 12 schools in that area, and we could come out there and take a vacation day and let's just go and visit some of these and talk to them about it.
And then we also discussed the impact of some impacts of the regional agreement, and it was discussed that needing to get the state involved since they could be a party to any agreement, and this may be a question we can get to the place on. Our next meeting is May 2nd, Tuesday, May 2nd. We will be including town administrators, board of select from both Hampton and Wilbraham, and capital planning from both towns to our meeting for further discussion. Similarly to when we had staff.
Yeah, the one thing that I did see in the minutes of that meeting, when you were talking about getting the state involved with the regional agreement, so if I'm not mistaken, basically the regional agreement, you would handle any modifications to the regional agreement between the two towns. Once you have the proposed changes, those get sent to DESI.
Yeah.
If you talk to them now, they're probably just going to say, come back to us when you have proposed changes.
Thank you.
So,
finance
sorry.
operations. Oh, yep.
On that, I think the biggest thing that, and I've heard Cheryl say it multiple times, it was 5 years ago that we had the long conversation on middle school being the vestibule to high school, I believe was the phrase that was used, and how critical it is. And so it really comes down to, I think, a lot of questions on that 8th grade. So at one point in time, we were told middle school is absolutely the best model for these kids. The middle school model is the best model for these children for academic achievement, social emotional achievement. And then there's conversations on 8 to 12 is the best, I'm sure, depending upon who you speak to, their different thoughts. But I think that's one that I would encourage the group to really have some listening sessions amongst the community and really understand from experts from schools that are out there what is, from an achievement level standpoint, the single best model, so that we can answer that definitively and be able to assuage some of the concerns that are out there in the community.
Because if the 8th grade, if the model that we've been using isn't maybe the best model, but maybe there's a different model we should use that could potentially be an offset in cost, which would change the budget potentially of what you would need, since you're splitting everybody off of one building into another building.
I would not use budget at all in that conversation. To me, it should be about the achievement and what's best for the
100%.
students, and I think people would probably be more receptive to that conversation if it was done through that lens.
Any other questions? Comments? Regarding budget finance?
Yeah, I think we're talking about finance enough tonight.
All right. So we'll move on to collaborative.
Last night, we had our first meeting actually in person together, so it was the first time I met everybody in person since I've been on it, which has been interesting. Sorry, I repeated that over again. So they had a general advisory committee presentation, which each part of CTEC presented what their students are doing, the co-ops that they're doing, and where they're going to once they graduate. After that, the students put on a dinner for all of their mentors and all of the companies that they work with, or their co-op meeting. The transportation update, they ordered their electrical buses and chargers. They anticipate a 9-month lead time. The chargers they chose able to generate electric that they can sell back to the grid. So there's the potential for each charger to potentially make $18,000 to sell back, which they said would most likely happen during the summer when the buses aren't actually being used, because they will have all that stored.
Each charger?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Wow.
So we'll see.
Yeah. That's brilliant.
Anyway, that bus will pay for itself. And then maybe some more. Do we have to put chargers in any of the buildings, just in case?
I think they're putting them in the lots. So there's gonna be, I think there's gonna
Boston
be,
Road.
on Boston Road, there's gonna be 8 electric buses, but I know they got like an extra charger in case, for each site they got 1 extra charger anyway, so I think it'll be at the sites, not at.
I wasn't sure if any one of the schools would have had one just as a, oh, my battery's a little low.
I actually think that it will be in the future. When teams come here from Nantucket for a tournament game and have to recharge while they're playing so they can go back.
And it makes it easier if they have a place where they can plug in, so.
At Amazon, we have electric vehicles, and if they go out at, not less, I think it's something like not less than 80% charged, then we plan that how much time they're out on the road and getting back and stuff like that. That's a whole equation. A fully charged bus will get you hundreds of miles, but they're not doing hundreds of miles, at least locally.
You just want to make sure it gets charged, though.
Yeah. Each
And they did specifically already told me an electric bus will not be going on the route on Munson Road or any of the mountains, because they don't think that.
They'll make it up the hill?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Any questions?
Probably safer.
All right, thank you. We will move on. There's nothing for the corporation or negotiations. We'll move on to policy subcommittee. Maura?
Oh, look, we have a second reading tonight on all of our favorite policies. KCD, public gifts to schools, IKF, graduation requirements, and JHC, absences and excuses. Tonight again is the second reading, so the next meeting we have will be the final vote to accept the policies. We don't have another meeting scheduled, but I will reach out about scheduling one more meeting before the end of the school year.
Thank you. Consent agenda?
Make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. So analysis of the data obtained through the equity audit continues. We are in the process of scheduling a meeting to check in with the team writing the report, again with the goal of getting the final report to come back to the school committee by the end of the year. This wasn't listed, but I will also give an update on the website. So on April 10th, I had a kickoff with our new website vendor to begin the process of building our new pages. At that meeting, I reinforced our desire for a website that was appealing and engaging, sharing some examples and features that the website review and evaluation team had identified as core for our new website. At the meeting, I learned that the pace of development will depend on the ability to provide assets to the developers. As a reminder, assets are photos, videos, and audio files that we'd like to have placed on the website. To launch the site for July 1st, they'd like to have us have all the assets to them by April 21st, which is 12 days after that meeting. So, and it was also a vacation week. We're not going to meet that deadline. It's going to push us back a little bit. But they agreed that the story of our district would be told much better if we provided assets by people who are experts in the district, which to me are our students. So we do have a plan for our students, guided by our art faculty, to visit the schools during the month of May to gather assets. They also use the money from the car show to buy a drone, so hopefully we'll have aerial footage as well. Hopefully we'll have aerial moving footage as well. It'll be a much more dynamic look. So looking forward to that. All of which is to say that my dream I had that on June 30th I would shut down one website and on July 1st I'd open another. It's not going to go exactly like that. In fact, the vendor said that's a bad way to do it because there might be problems with the website and you want to have your old website to fall back to. So we will be running dual websites, at least for a while during the summer, maybe into the beginning of next year. But work continues to go forward on that, and I'm really excited about where that will lead. So now let me talk about meeting evaluations. At our last meeting, I reported there were a few items left on the strategic plan for this year that hadn't been started yet. One of those was evaluating the quality of staff meetings at all levels. I thought that was going to be a relatively minor step in our action plan, which is one of the reasons why I've been holding it off to the end while I dealt with some more complex things. However, that wasn't that. It turns out not to be so simple. Now that you know me a little bit, I'm sure it won't surprise you to know that I wanted an empirically validated instrument to assess the quality of our meetings. So I went to the literature, and I found that there's a whole field of meeting science. And it turns out there are some very practical reasons to study meetings. First, there are economic issues. It's estimated that there are 55 million meetings held each day in the U.S., and that the estimated annual economic cost of meetings in the U.S. alone is somewhere around $40 billion. So if there is a better way to do meetings, there's an economic interest in doing it. That would be a good enough reason to look at meetings. But for me, an even more interesting part of the research went into the psychological impact of meetings in organizational culture. Learned that for many people, meetings are their primary way of experiencing the culture of their organization. Through meetings, people learn such things as whether all people are treated fairly or whether some are more equal than others. Through meetings, people learn whether their ideas are valued or whether they'll be brushed aside. They also learn whether they're expected to help other people with their problems and contribute to solutions or just sit back and let people flounder. The efficiency of a meeting or lack of a meeting also speaks volumes about how the organization values people's time. One of the concepts from the field that resonates with me is this statement that whoever calls a meeting becomes the steward of other people's time. Time they'll never get back. Earlier this week, the district administrative team field tested a meeting evaluation tool developed by some of the leading researchers in the field. There were 4 subscales on the tool that we tested. After some discussion, we decided that we want to move forward with a shorter version, just focusing on one of those subscales known as the good meeting practices and meeting citizenship behavior subscale. So we'll use that to gather more feedback in the weeks and months ahead from faculty and staff on the extent to which the meetings in the district conform to good meeting practice and positive participant behavior. So that actually turned out to be an interesting and possibly impactful part of our strategic plan. The last thing I would just want to mention is that, as it's already come up tonight, we received a packet from MASC letting us know that resolutions deadline is June 1st, and many times the committee has discussed a desire to submit resolutions, so we have about a month to do that. And that's my report.
So add that to the agenda when you make your agenda with Ronnie. If you don't mind.
Any questions?
No, that's great.
Have a need for executive session, so, yep, for agenda items first. Well, yeah, well, I was just letting people know what we had to do before we did that. So, but that's okay.
We need to do our safety audit.
What's that?
We need to do our safety audit.
Yep. What? No, it just was looking for it's an additional record. Did I just add something?
I thought you should use your microphone.
Okay. Yep.
Big.
I was able to go to quite a bit of the training today at Bethlehem Church for Partners for Youth. And the training that Dan gave was entertaining, very, very right on target for our teenagers and our middle school children. And I hope we can get maybe him to come and do something here.
That'd be great. I think most of you are aware, but just to make it public, there is a comedy show here next Friday night in support of the Ultimate Party. It's a fundraiser. The last I looked, they didn't have many people that were signed up for it. My wife and I are going, but if we can get the word out amongst us, get on social media, let people know. The Ultimate Party is, it's such a great thing for these kids. And it really has become a tradition in this town. I want to make sure that we support them.
Are you performing at the comedy?
They're just going to put the spotlight on me.
In street clothes? In the alley.
Sweats, just sweats. Bag of Cheetos.
In the alley.
No, it's not chips.
Little slippers, leather slippers, you know.
So we do the need for executive session pursuant to Master General Law, C, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of public body and the chair secretaries, C if as E. I would like to say that when we adjourn, we'll adjourn this meeting and we'll be going to executive session and not returning.
Motion to adjourn to executive session.
Second.
Roll call vote. Bill?
Aye.
Sherry? Aye. Sean?
Aye.
Lisa? Aye.
Aye.
Myself, aye. We are adjourned from general meeting. We're going to executive session.
Can we do a biological before we?
Not 2 seconds.